In a world where nature shows no mercy, from violent thunderstorms and devastating hurricanes to raging wildfires, catastrophic disasters, and desperate emergency evacuations, these events have changed history forever. This is Stormy Horizon, documenting Earth's most devastating disasters. A gigantic Category 5 hurricane approaching New Orleans at dawn. Massive spiraling storm clouds over the Gulf Coast. Lightning inside storm bands. Dark ocean waves crashing toward the city skyline. Meteorologists inside a dimly lit weather center tracking Hurricane Katrina on glowing radar screens. Tense atmosphere. Satellite imagery showing a rapidly intensifying storm over the Gulf of Mexico. Television news broadcast warning about Hurricane Katrina. New Orleans mayor delivering an emergency evacuation speech during a press conference. Worried officials surrounding him. Microphones and flashing cameras. Tense disaster response atmosphere. Mass evacuation traffic leaving New Orleans. Endless lines of cars on packed highways under dark storm clouds. Civil engineers studying levee failure simulations inside a government office. Blueprints spread across tables. Computer models showing catastrophic flooding scenarios. Dramatic, low-key lighting. A digital simulation of New Orleans flooding after levee collapse. Floodwaters swallowing an American city at night. Rooftops barely visible above black water. Haunting atmosphere. Symbolic visual of an entire state drowning. Wide aerial shot of New Orleans geography. Mississippi River, Lake Pontchartrain, and low-lying neighborhoods clearly visible. Dramatic storm clouds forming overhead. By August 31st, that number reaches 80%. Some parts of the city are submerged under 15 feet of water. The famous French Quarter and Garden District, among the oldest parts of the city, and crucially among the few areas built above sea level, are largely spared. But the vast residential neighborhoods that surround them are gone. Lakeview, the lower 9th Ward, St. Bernard area, Gentilly, New Orleans East. These are not flooded. They are submerged. As the system failed, the disaster shifted from infrastructure to people. New Orleans living everyday life beside levees, jazz culture, and historic homes contrasted against looming flood defenses. Subtle sense of danger. Engineers inspecting aging levees during stormy weather. Cracked concrete flood walls. Worried expressions. As the system failed, the disaster shifted from infrastructure to people. Tens of thousands of people who could not evacuate seek shelter in two locations: the Louisiana Superdome and the New Orleans Convention Center. At the Superdome, roughly 15,000 people arrive before the storm. What follows is a humanitarian crisis that unfolds on live television in front of the entire country. Food runs out, water runs out, toilets stop working. The roof of the Superdome is partially torn open by the wind. People are sleeping on concrete floors in 95-degree heat. 40,000 homes flooded in St. Bernard Parish, just east of New Orleans. At the Superdome, home to 9,000 storm refugees, chunks of the metal roof have been blown away. The stench of death is especially strong around the convention center and the Superdome, where people have moved into the open air as they try to get away from it and closer to where buses and National Guardsmen can get to them. We've been out here 4 days. Really? We've really been out here 4 days. Thousands of people who are stranded in flooded homes communicate their locations however they can. spray painting rooftops, waving from upper-story windows, calling family members who call news stations, who call emergency services. The response from local, state, and federal authorities is widely criticized as slow, uncoordinated, and inadequate. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, faces fierce criticism for its lack of preparation and its failure to mobilize resources quickly enough for a disaster that its own simulations had predicted in detail. One of the most haunting images of the entire disaster is the sight of people, mostly elderly, many of them without the means to leave, stranded on elevated highway overpasses in the August heat, surrounded by flood water, waiting for help that takes days to arrive. Doris Comradell, a 93-year-old woman from Chelmet in St. Bernard Parish, is rescued from her flooded home after spending several days trapped there. She had lived in the same house for decades. When rescuers finally reached her, she had survived for days on the small amount of food she managed to carry upstairs to the second floor as flood waters consumed her home. Her neighborhood, like most of St. Bernard Parish, was completely destroyed, leaving behind shattered homes, debris, and silence. She never returned. The death toll rises slowly because for days and even weeks, the true scale of the disaster remains impossible to measure. Victims are discovered in attics, inside flooded cars, and in homes that appear untouched from the outside, but hide the bodies of people who never escaped. Nearly 40% of the fatalities are caused by drowning, and almost half of all victims are over the age of 74. The storm did not kill randomly. It claimed the lives of those with the fewest resources, the least mobility, and nowhere else to go. The official death toll from Hurricane Katrina, revised by the National Hurricane Center, stands at approximately 1,400 people. The total damage reaches an estimated $125 billion, making it one of the costliest natural disasters in American history. In Louisiana alone, more than 1,500 people lose their lives. Over 134,000 housing units in New Orleans, nearly 70% of all occupied homes in the city, sustain damage, while more than 1 million housing units across the broader Gulf Coast region are affected. The population of New Orleans falls dramatically from nearly 485,000 as families are displaced, neighborhoods are abandoned, and entire communities struggle to recover from the devastation left behind by the storm. Some neighborhoods never recover. The lower 9th Ward, one of the hardest hit areas, remains visibly scarred for years, with empty lots where houses once stood and streets that were rebuilt but never repopulated. In June 2006, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers officially acknowledges that faulty design specifications, incomplete sections, and substandard construction of levee segments contributed to the flooding of New Orleans. A subsequent analysis by the American Society of Civil Engineers concludes that 2/3 of the flooding could have been avoided if the levees had held. The deadliest aspect of Hurricane Katrina was not the storm itself, but the infrastructure failure that followed it. And that infrastructure failure was not inevitable. It was preventable. Not because no one knew, but because nothing was done. The federal government eventually commits more than $14 billion to rebuilding and reinforcing the levee system around New Orleans. with the Army Corps of Engineers spending $14.3 billion to strengthen the city's hurricane protection system. Do I feel safe? Do I think the Corps of Engineers has done enough to protect this city, to protect this area? No. New floodgates, pumps, and surge barriers are constructed. The system that exists today is substantially more robust than the one that failed in 2005. Whether it is enough remains an open question that every hurricane season brings back into focus. Katrina's name was retired by the World Meteorological Organization in April 2006. It will never be used again for an Atlantic storm. 20 years later, New Orleans is still New Orleans. The music still plays on Frenchmen Street. The food is still unlike anything else in America. The city rebuilt, but it rebuilt unevenly, and in the neighborhoods that bore the worst of the flooding. The question of whether the recovery was ever truly complete has never fully gone away. Katrina didn't just drown a state. It exposed everything that was already broken underneath. And for thousands of people, the cost of that failure was permanent. The storm didn't destroy New Orleans. The system did. If you made it this far, I appreciate you being here. These videos take a lot of time to put together, and every like, comment, and subscription genuinely helps keep them going. So, if you want more stories like this, consider supporting the channel